All right, guys. So today I'm going to go over a Glock 47 that I just kind of kitted out here recently, and got a lot of Glocks, do a lot of Glock builds, but I kind of wanted an actual full-size Glock. I have a Glock 17. I have a lot of 19s. I've got a Glock 45, but the 17 that I built out kind of as a range toy. So I really wanted something that was just dedicated towards like hard use in duty. And that's kind of why I did the 47 the way that I did. But this is just a regular size 19. Obviously, it's got like a light and a red dot and stuff, but I just kind of wanted to show you the size difference between just a regular 19 and a full size 47 with what I consider all the bells and whistles. So it's a substantial size difference, in my opinion, right? You see how much longer that grip is, and then you can kind of see how much longer the slide is on that as well. So it sticks out quite a bit further. This one I obviously conceal carried. I love this build. It's a great build. But this one, I mainly am just running an OWB Safari Land, so that's kind of why I picked the things that I did on it. So anyway, let's get right into it. Glock 47 MOS, and this is kind of the gun that's replacing the Glock 17. And I'm not entirely sure why. I mean, I kind of understand and kind of don't at the same time. It's basically a Glock 17 without the full-length dust cover and with a 19-length recoil spring. That's really all a Glock 47 is. So it's got a 17-length slide, 17-length frame that holds 17 rounds, shoots 9mm. But like on my 17, that full-length dust cover comes all the way out to about right here, basically where this where the built-in slide is. You see this gap that you have right there? That's built into the bottom of the slide. So your recoil spring, that's why you can have a shortened 19 length recoil spring on this slide. That's how you can get away with it. Parts compatibility is a lot easier with the 47, 49, 45, and the 19. I think that's kind of why they did it. So people had options for different size slides and frames and could still use the same parts like recoil springs and stuff. So that's kind of why I think they did it. It makes sense in a way, but it's not adding anything really revolutionary. Nothing that the 17 wasn't already doing. I actually like the recoil impulse of the 17 a little bit more than the 47, but here we are with the 47. I just went ahead and then kind of built it out the way that I wanted. So let's talk about the optics setup that I have on here. So I went with a CH Precision RMR plate, and they're about 40 or 50 bucks depending on where you get it. They're inexpensive. I think Ford Controls does a better plate, but I've not had any issues with CH Precision plates. I've stripped out screws on a few of them, but a lot of them are old. The screws are old. I play a lot of musical optics on my pistols, so I'm not mad about the strip screws. The plates have held up fine for me. I haven't had any issues with tolerances. I've heard some horror stories with CH Precision plates or the optics falling off. I think that has more to do with how someone's installing the optic than it does the plate itself. But yes, I do think the Ford Controls makes a better plate. And I threw an SRO, Trijicon SRO on top. And if I had the extra money, I'd probably just put an RMR HD on this. I really like the RMR HD. The window is not as big on the RMR HD as it is on the SRO. I like the auto adjust feature. I actually use it on the RMR HD. You're not going to be able to see it unless, hold on. Let's see. There it goes. There's the auto adjust on the RMR HD. SRO won't do that, but I don't really use auto adjust a whole lot. In fact, I've only just been getting used to the RMR HD auto adjust, and I quite like it. I like the features of the RMR HD a little bit more than the SRO, but the controls are a little different, and they're kind of hard to get used to. Whereas like the SRO is just it's a much more simpler dot. It's got a nice big window. It does it like it's so easy just to find the dot on the SRO, and with like suppressor height sights, I just think it's the sights are less intrusive on an SRO than like, let's say like these are suppressor height sights on a on an RMR right here, and you can see how much space that these suppressor height sights take up on that window of that dot. So it's a little tighter, and trying to find your sight picture on something like this, whereas the SRO just makes it a lot better. And then I got night vision lower 1/3 sights for the Glock MOS. Like night vision sights, I usually get Trijicon. I bought night sights just because why not? It's nice if my dot fails, I'm shooting in the dark. I mean, I'm playing a lot of make believe and stuff, but you know, it's stuff that goes on in my head. If my dot fails, I have to shoot in the dark without a light, which will probably never happen. I can still get a sight picture, right? And I got the front green and blacked out rear with the tritium vials. If I get a red dot, I try to have the disparity of a green front sight or a yellow front sight from the red instead of like an orange, because orange and red are pretty similar. And if I get a green dot, I try to get like an orange front. You know what I mean? Just to kind of offset the difference between my front sight and the red dot or the green dot. So that's kind of why I do that. But I really like the lower 1/3 just because it's not intrusive in that window. You can still kind of co-witness the, or you know, you kind of lollipop that red dot if you want, but really you're kind of shooting like that. You're getting a nice open sight picture with the lower 1/3 night vision sight. So the next thing on the docket is the Radian Ramjet and Afterburner. This is my 5th build that I put a Radian Ramjet and Afterburner on. I think they're excellent compensators. Best Glock compensator, hands down, on the market, in my opinion. The ease of use of like installation, being able to maintain the comp, the fact that it's steel where other comps are aluminum, the fact that it is only adds a 1/2 inch to length, whereas other compensators, they add quite a bit of length if you're using just like a regular thread-on style comp on it. You can see the size difference between all of those. They're almost like double the size, right? Let's get that. There's the Arc Division. So that's almost double the size the Arc Division is. This is Suarez Street Comp, a little less than half the size. And this is the Agency dual port comp, and it's over double the size, but it's dual ports, right? So the size, it's nice micro size. I know Parker Mountain Machine makes a micro size comp, but it's basically permanent because you have to rock set it on. It's still threaded, so it's not 50 state legal. Even though 50 state legal means nothing to me, I'm always going to live in a free state. It's made out of steel, where like I think the Agency micro comp, the Sage Dynamics micro comp, I think it's aluminum, and most other comps are going to be aluminum. Like the comps I just showed you, these are all light and aluminum, right? These are all aluminum comps. Where the steel, I think it's a 4140 steel that Radian makes this out of. And it's such a badass looking design. And you can kind of see with the difference in the bronze barrel and the black comp, how it lines up into the comp. Right there. And it's just so easy to maintain. It's easy to clean. I really like it. Is it a huge performance difference? It depends what you're doing. If you're shooting really fast, like you're doing a bell drill, and or you're doing double taps and stuff, I find that what it does, it allows me to keep almost the dot in my window as I'm tracking it, and it just allows the sight to go back down a lot faster, in my opinion. So it's not really about the recoil, it's just how, I don't know, it's like it tracks faster, if that makes sense. And that's worth the performance upgrade to me, at least, because if most of the time when I'm training, I'm training like double taps, triple taps, bell drills, where I'm doing like quick successive shots, because if I ever get into a situation where I have to utilize my pistol, more than likely I'm going to be shooting more than one round. So that I like the ability just to have that. And you're talking like thousandths of a second just faster, because if you're thousandths of a second faster than the other guy, you're more likely to survive, or at least get your shots off before he does. So those, thousandths, 100ths of a second faster, you can even shave off something like close to like half a second or a second, depending on what drills that you're running, and that's substantial in the shooting game. So that's why I like the Ramjet. Are they expensive? Yes. Are they high quality? They are. It's also a yes. You get what you pay for. These are extremely well machined, extremely good compensators. They use good materials. These are inherently accurate. They're not more accurate than like an OEM Glock marksman barrel, but they're just as accurate. And I think that's a big testament to how good the OEM Glock barrels are. It's just a good overall product, right? I highly recommend them. And it's not like I was looking for, I think they call this the Radianite version. It's like a bronze version. It's just what they had in stock at the time. And the black DLC was going to be out of stock. It says until December of 2025. And I just didn't want to wait till December and stuff. So let's see. Here's the OEM barrel and stuff, and you can kind of see it there, right? OEM barrels are fine. I just you're never really going to shoot out a pistol barrel and stuff, just the pressures are so low. But it's I don't know, it's you have to buy the barrel with the comp, unlike your threaded barrels. You can buy a threaded barrel and then thread your comps on, but you still have to buy your threaded barrel. Still have to buy your aftermarket comp. So it's expensive. It's like, let's call it $320 to $350 for a Radium Ramjet and afterburner. So that's a lot of money to people, but I think it's worth the performance upgrade. All right, threw an X300 turbo on here. Best flashlight in the market. I absolutely love X300 turbos. I sold off all my Streamlight TLR1 HLs just because I took a half-night low light level class. It was pretty basic, but it taught me a lot about how lights function in real life situations if you're trying to utilize them in a self-defense situation. And like a lot of times when you're playing with like pistol lights and rifle lights and stuff, even like handheld lights, like in your house, and you're just trying them out, a lot of times you're using it in complete darkness. You're going to need, when you're talking about other light sources being pointed back at you, when you're talking about trying to like see through like objects like glass and tinted glass, curtains even, you want the most candela that you can get. And I just find the TLR1HL and even the X300 Ultras, they're anemic. They're anemic when it comes to breaking through those barriers. This is 60 or 66,000 candela with 680 lumens. It doesn't have as much of a flooded flood as opposed to like this is a much more just concentrated beam of light. But to me, it's worth it. It's absolutely worth it. The X300 Ultras are the same price as X300 Turbos. Just get the turbos. They're much more usable in real world situations. So if you use a PL350 with an OKW, you'll be fine too. If you use a PLH V2, that's obviously a better head than like an X300 Ultra TLR1HL. So that's also a good pistol light to use. So I do not know of another like high candela pistol light on the market, but I would just kind of stick with Surefire. A lot of people make holsters for them. I have a lot of like Safari Lands. I've got a lot of IWBs with that are S or X300 compatible. So I just kind of stick with X300s. I've got a lot of X300s. So And you can take them on and off your stuff. That's not like the biggest pain, but I just choose just to keep them married onto my weapon systems. Rifle lights, pistol lights, doesn't matter. I just like to keep them married on there. So that's the X300 Ultra. I use a Align Tactical thumb ledge. It's a full steel thumb ledge. Goes into your locking block pin and underneath your takedown lever right there. The downside to it is it makes this disassembly just a little bit harder. I'm going to show you that in a little bit. Here's an Edgar Sherman's Designs magwell. It's an interesting magwell. Like I run a lot. Like this is a SLR. This one is a Killer Innovations, and this one's an Overwatch Precision. I run a lot of different magwells just to try them out. This is the first magwell. First of all, it's much just like bigger in footprint than, like, let's say the Killer Innovations, or even like the SLR one. It's a bigger profile magwell, so if you're not into big magwells, it's not quite as big as like a competition style magwell, but it's still a pretty large magwell. It's an interesting design. It's kind of cool looking. If you ask me, with these like cutouts in the front and the sides to kind of like help strip your magazines if you need to. Like you could grab your magazine right here, strip it out. And according to the video, the reason why he kind of designed it this way is if you were to try to insert your magazine just a little angled like that, it funnels it. And after playing with it for a little bit, like that straight on, I'm going to twist it. It does kind of funnel the magazine if you're going at different angles like that. I don't know. It's an interesting design. I like the magwell. I like the aesthetic of the magwell, but this is the only magwell that I've bought that hasn't been compatible with 100% of my magazine extensions. I run a lot of different magazine extensions. I think I have 119 like Glock magazines, OEM Glock mags, with about 43 or 44 of them having magazine extensions. I'm running about 16 different types or brands of magazine extensions. And this is the only magwell that I've had issues running like 99% of those magazine extensions. I can basically only run 2 brands of magazine extensions with this particular magwell. So that is something to keep in mind when you're choosing magwells. Haven't had an issue with SLR, haven't had an issue with Killer Innovations, haven't had an issue with Overwatch Precision and their compatibility with magazine extensions. So that's kind of the bummer with the Edgar Sherman's Designs magwell. Because it's a good looking magwell. It's a good functioning magwell. It's got everything that I want except the compatibility. So I just wish all they'd have to do is kind of cut this a little more angled, and I think it would fit more magwells or magazine extensions. So I think that, and right back here is kind of where you can kind of see where some of them are getting hit on there for me trying to fit them in and stuff. So this one fits fine. This is a Odin Works +5 magazine extension. These are great magazine extensions. I really like these. The springs are really good with them, which I think the springs are people discount the springs. To me, like Shield Arms makes some really good springs, or includes really good springs with the magazine extensions, and Odin Works does too. I can find these for about the same price as the Odin Works. So Shield Arms, I find, are just a little bit easier to strip out if I need to, because it's got like a little ledge just to pull this on. Where this does it, it's got a little texture on here, but it's slick. Where the Shield Arms is a little bit bigger and a little easier to strip mags with. Magazine extension's weight just helps it drop free a little bit easier. Holds more rounds, obviously. So that's kind of the benefit to magazine extensions. But you can see this one isn't going to fit. So this one doesn't fit. A lot of them don't fit. But the Odin Works does fit, and the Odin Works looks good. The kind of all black look looks good, minus the bronze. But I don't know. I don't think it looks all that bad and stuff. So let's get this back into frame here. And I'm going to show you something that I do with all my Glocks, just to kind of help the performance of it. And it's a basically free modification you can do. And this is the main downside to the Align Tactical thing, as you can see how that works right there. You have to pull it out, you have to pull your trigger, and then you can release the slide and stuff. But I do this with all my Glocks, and I think it's something a lot of people can benefit from. It also helps you understand the function of your firearm and stuff, and that's always polishing your parts. So I polish the connector. That's a big one to polish. I even polish the trigger return spring right here, where the cruciform goes into the top. It kind of rides a little bit in there, but I polish that. I polish the top of the cruciform. Actually, I'll polish the whole thing, but if you're just polishing it, I polish at the top of the cruciform where your firing pin's going to be riding. I even polish your trigger bar. This is where it's going to make contact with your safety plunger. I polish the locking block, just where the barrel lockup on it is, if you're looking to do that. I polish the rails on the frame, and then I'll polish the safety plunger right here. I'll even polish the firing pin. I polish the whole firing pin, but you don't have to do that. Polish the face right there and the top where it kind of goes on the cruciform, and then I'll even polish the safety depressor plunger too. And that just kind of helps smooth out all the action and stuff. And you can kind of see how that rides there on your connector, right, as it disengages the sear. And then right there where the top of your firing pin, right here, that's where that rides right there. So as it moves back and forth, though. Let me show you what an OEM non-polished trigger bar looks and see if you can tell a difference. So this is the polished. This is the non-polished. Polished, non-polished. And this feels rough compared to this, right? It's just so much smoother, the polishing on it. They say the trigger pull is about 5.5 pounds on an OEM Glock. Yeah, see that difference? That's why I do it. This pulls at about, I want to say 4.25 pounds. So I've knocked out about 3/4 pound without doing anything to reliability, in my opinion. Some people might say less, but it makes just everything a little bit smoother on the action, on that trigger pull and the take up. Hold on, I think I got to put this slide on first before I insert this. And that's like one of the main downsides to that Align Tactical is you have to, there he goes, do a function check. Let's check out this trigger pull. I did modify the trigger shoe where, let's show this other trigger shoe. Push down all the way, you can kind of see just the tip of it sticks out a little bit. And as I'm shooting a lot, it irritates my finger pad, especially if I'm shooting all day, where I shaved off the tip of it, so it's not affecting the reliability, because this part right here is what catches right before you can pull the trigger. Right up here, it has to be depressed this way. So you could actually shave off all this front if you really wanted to, but I still like being able to feel the safety dingus, and there's just completely smooth on the trigger shoe face, and then a nice clean break. The trigger reset on Glocks, a little longer than I would like, but man, it's so audible and so tactile. I love the feel of that trigger reset. And then you get to the wall, and then a break. You can sometimes get a little jitter, but there's the wall, pulling, nice break. And like I said, that's about 4.25 pounds on my trigger pull gauge. I can sometimes get it down to 4, but I'm going to say 4 1/4 is probably the average trigger pull on this. And that's quite good for an OEM trigger, in my opinion, because let's get this shit out of the way. Because this one, different trigger shoe, definitely shorter reset, but still OEM. It's amazing what a trigger shoe can do to a trigger, in my opinion. So that's the Ranger Proof Vex 3 trigger. And then I love this trigger. This is Overwatch Precision trigger. These are probably the best triggers on the market. Most reliable, best feeling triggers that I've felt for Glock triggers and stuff on the market. And I go with the metal one over the polymer. This is a polymer one. And it's not a bad trigger. I just like the feeling of the metal a little bit more. I think it's just a little bit better feeling. So it's worth the extra cash to me. So that's my full Glock 47 build. I think it's a good looking pistol. I like the full length of it, including the extra length on the ramjet gives it. I just think it's an aesthetically very balanced looking pistol. You know, we're like just a regular 19. That's a pretty balanced looking pistol. Although with the long slide, like with the ramjet and stuff, I still think it looks good. Whereas the 45, I don't know, it looks a little bottom long to me, even with the ramjet and stuff on it. So I think the balance on this build is just perfect. And it feels like a full-size handgun. It feels substantial in my hand. It feels like I'm shooting a large pistol, which I am, but it feels larger to me than my Glock 45. It feels larger than my Glock 17. That little half an inch absolutely makes it feel a little bit better. The recoil impulse is good on here. I find it better than like my 19s, my 45s. I still find the recoil impulse on my 17 without the comp just a little smoother in action. So maybe it's that recoil spring. Maybe it's just the build that I did. Who knows? Because I got an aftermarket like DPM recoil spring in that 17. Maybe that has something to do with it. And I've done a lot of modifications to that actual pistol and stuff. So yeah, Glock 47 MOS. I know it's just another Glock, but I like it. So let me know what you guys think. I'm probably not going to do a 49. If I can still find a 17 MOS, I'll still buy another 17 MOS. But some people might ask, like, why do you build so many Glocks? And they all build them very similar. It's because I like what I like now. And I remember I only had about like 2 or 3 pistols back in 2019 or 2018. I buy and sold a lot of them, and I just had about 3. I just carried 1 for the most part, and it was a Glock. And I broke an extractor, or ended up wearing where it wasn't extracting the brass as well as it should be, and I could not find an extractor, a Gen 5 extractor, for the life of me in 2020. And I basically fretted ever having to use that pistol. I was afraid of its reliability, and I couldn't get another extractor for months. And I told myself once I could buy more pistols and more parts, I would absolutely have all the parts that I needed to ensure that I had a functioning pistol setup, no matter what broke, or even if I broke 3 extractors in a row in one day, I still could have a running pistol. That's why I buy so many of the same types of pistols, and I build them out the same type of way, because I know how the gun's going to behave, how it's going to feel. Even though these are inherently different pistols with different stuff on them, they behave very similar. The controls are very similar. The recoil impulse is very similar on them, although it's a little different. They're very similar in feel overall. There's not like a huge difference between them. There's just minor differences. So That's why I build out pistols the same way, and I have so many of what people consider the same fucking pistol, right? So anyway, that's my experience with and reasons why I build out Glocks the way that I do. So really, in all actuality, if you wanted to build out two pistols, maybe a certain way, in very similar ways, that would be my suggestion. You only really need two, one and a backup. If you wanted to get three, so you just, you know, what as they say, one is none and two is one, and I guess three would be two. I don't know. It's up to you. If you have the disposable income, go ahead and do it. I will say, if I wanted to strip this down and get my money back for the Glock, I probably could. Could I get my money back for all the parts? I could get pretty close to it. I could get pretty much almost retail from my X300, almost retail from my SRO. Ramjets are probably about $75 cheaper used that I see on the market. And then, you know, magwells, magazine extensions, the small parts, definitely a little bit harder to get your money back on. So it's not like I'm going to get my money back on the investment that I put into the pistol, but it's not far off, in my opinion. So you could save a few dollars by buying some of the stuff used, but stuff like a barrel and a ramjet, I just kind of would buy new. Optics and flashlights, I say go for it. Go find them used. If you can save a couple $100 on an optic and maybe like $50, $75, $100 on a flashlight, be my guest, because Trijicon upholds a very good warranty, and so does Surefire. So I just had to utilize Holosun's warranty system for my Holosun SCS. The glass ended up cracking all the way through the optic, and it's only like 3 months old. So we're gonna see how good their return policy is. I just want a different. I want like another SCS. I'll go run and get it real quick. But what I ended up doing, I was for a Smith & Wesson that I had built out. So it was for this Smith & Wesson. I had the SCS on this, and then in order to keep on running this pistol, I had to buy another plate and another optic. So I just went ahead and got an RMR HD. So I like the SCS because it can co-witness the nice sights on this, and you can see how low those sights are and how much the optic plate and the optic doesn't co-witness with the sights. So that's how far down the SCS sits on that slide. So I really do like the SCS, but man, the crack going all the way through the top and back down, man, that crack got really bad in that glass, and there isn't a flaw on anywhere on that housing whatsoever. So I don't know. I might keep this RMR HD on here, but I'm not entirely sure. I like the co-witnessing of the sights, especially since I'm carrying this. And this is such a sweet pistol, I must say that. The M&Ps, I'm becoming a huge fan of M&Ps too. This is my 6th M&P that I've purchased here recently. And man, with a Apex trigger, Floyd's magwell, they're just incredible feeling and shooting pistols. I'm slowly becoming an actual M&P fan and learning the weapon system a little bit more. It's only taken me like 10 or 15 minutes now to change out a trigger. I've changed out 5 triggers on M&P now in the last 3-4 months, so I'm getting pretty good at it. So still working on changing the extractor and some of the internals. Parts are a little harder to come by. You basically have to run the same trigger and magwell because there aren't a lot on the market. So there's some downsides to M&Ps, but man, they're really fantastic, right? But you can kind of see, I'm getting off topic to my Glock build, but these are basically the same build in different forms, right? So you got this M&P here, and you got the Glock 19 right here. So basically the same pistol, just what brand that you like. I actually probably have a little bit, I have more in the Glock than I do the M&P, so the M&P is going to be your cheaper choice. If you're looking for similar type builds, right, that do the same things, M&Ps are going to be cheaper than Glocks. and I think they're great pistols too. So becoming a real big M&P fan, but as you can see, I'm a huge Glock fan too. So anyway, guys, that's been my Glock 47 MOS build. I'm really going to shut it off this time. Appreciate anybody that watches all the way through and all the comments and stuff. So let me know what you guys think. Do you like the full length, actual almost 34 length Glock 47 build? Would you build out like an actual full size one, or are you more of a compact type of guy? Maybe you're just kind of want to keep it simple with a 45, or maybe you like the long slide Glock 19 like I do too. So this isn't being carried every day. This is a duty type weapon. So you can basically go all out with a full size build. You can buy a huge optic, a comp, get a huge flashlight, a big flared magwell, like a thumb rest. It doesn't matter what you do on a full size build because you're not worried about concealing it. And that's what's so nice about doing full size builds. So that's why I liked it. That's why I did it. And I just like pistols too. I like guns in general, so I like building them, and I somewhat collect them, but I shoot them too. I collect them, and I like to train and shoot and stuff. So that's just my thing. That's just my hobby. No one pays me to say the stuff. I buy all this shit myself. So just something I do on the side for fun. So anyway, guys, Glock 47 MOS.